Good old Michael Moore.
I look out of the faces of you protesters and I see the future of America. We are the 99%. Yes!
At it again, this time melting down over the absolute flop that was Fahrenheit 11/9. Now, you may know Michael Moore from his previous films, like I do. Things like Bowling for Columbine. I believe he also did a movie on the healthcare system, and now he did one on his toxic Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, the movie was beloved by critics, receiving a 77% on the Rotten Tomato critics meter. Unfortunately, when you actually look at the reviews, just like most movies on Rotten Tomatoes, is complete baloney. You have the actual audience giving it a 58. Here you have the average rating of a 6.9 out of 10 coming, and then having them certify it fresh at 77. And when you actually read the reviews, even the, quote, top critics don't care for it. The film will neither change minds nor soothe embittered hearts. I fear an opportunity has been missed. The punditry is trite, the snark is boring. While there are a few moments in the movie that can be said to be Moore at his best, the production as a whole may be Moore at his worst. And this is the end summary of having the toxic Trump derangement syndrome. You let it overtake every decision you make. Every move you make is about proving yourself right. Now, I don't care if you like Trump or you hate Trump, or if, like most people, you're pretty much indifferent on Trump. Like a lot of people, he had plenty of reluctant Trump voters, and there are a lot of people that still haven't gotten over the election. But what is the real reason this movie flopped at the theater? Now, according to the most recent numbers, it did just $3 million worldwide after being on over 1,700 screens. Unfortunately, this basically becomes an indicator of his overall appeal and the overall appeal of this never getting over losing attitude. And I think the real reason it flopped is not that it was a bad movie, which it was, or that people are necessarily sick of Michael Moore. It's just that the community, the people who want to be entertained, whether you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, it's shifted. It's gotten smarter. It's gotten sick of this lowbrow, like Trump bashing as comedy. It's gotten sick of politicizing everything. And these people have gotten lazy. A lot of liberal comedians, for example, take it from someone who I think is one of the smartest comedians on the planet, Norm Macdonald, that bad liberal comedians just rely on Trump. And you can see that in the ratings. Look at the Saturday Night Live ratings. Look at the ratings for all these award shows. Look at the ratings for Michael Moore's movie.
It's more difficult in the time of Trump for good comedians, and it's way easier for bad comedians. You don't have a worldview by just saying you don't like Trump. You know what I mean? That doesn't count. Like you can't just say I hate Trump, and that makes you a good person. And the Democrats just can't say I hate Trump, and that means they have a position. That's no position. So for idiots, it's an easier time because you go, well, that guy's the idiot, not me. But if you try to do smart comedy, it's better to stay away from Trump.
Look, if you have something poignant to say about Trump, then say it. But it is such a shortcut for a bad comedian that you're putting a joke out there that you already know half the country is not going to find funny. So you have to work twice as hard to be entertaining. Like, I can laugh at jokes about Trump, of course. I can laugh at jokes about Hillary Clinton, too. I can laugh at jokes about almost anything. I can laugh at about 9/11 jokes, okay? I can laugh at dead baby jokes. But they have to be good. They can't just be like, well, Trump's crazy. Everybody already knows that. So when you put out a movie and you expect to see record numbers at the cinema. And when your movie basically boils down to, look at all these wacky things Trump does, I'm not surprised that it failed. And when we look at his freak out now, him going full hysterical, says Americans are like Germans who allowed Hitler to rise.
Well, Mike, why are you making the comparisons between Hitler and Trump? And I always say to them, well, that's really not the movie. The movie is more comparing us to the Germans, the good Germans, one of the most civilized, cultured, educated, liberal democracies on the planet Earth. And they went along. There was a national emergency. The Reichstag burned down, their parliament. And you know, Hitler said the communists did it. We got to get rid of these communists. And sure enough, you know, Hitler's party won 32% of the parliament in 1932. 32%, which was the most.
With a dismal performance of a measly $3 million on whopping 1,719 screen, the movie seems to be an indicator that Moore's appeal is now limited to only adoring leftist critics and the dregs of society known as the resistance, and not many of them either. It could be that the poor-kind propagandist premise that President Trump is the new Hitler has become stale after 2 solid years of comparisons by celebrities and the establishment media who have flogged that particular mule to death, and Moore has missed the boat on monetizing it. I think that is exactly why this movie failed. When he comes out with a movie, it's too late. When he came out with Sicko about the healthcare system, too late. You want to come out with this movie during the election, not after the election. But that, of course, doesn't deter the 64-year-old who has become obscenely wealthy off making anti-capitalist movies, despite the cynicism and hypocrisy of it. And all after he continues his efforts to put the funny little mustache on Trump's face. He has taken to comparing Americans who aren't in the streets screaming for Trump's overthrow to those who turned a blind eye to Der Fuhrer and allowed the Nazis to seize power. Those people have often been referred to as the, quote, good Germans in a purely derogatory manner. And Moore was quick to invoke the term using an interview to promote his film with the leftist Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! He even dug up the last surviving member of the Nuremberg trials to make his point in another exploitation of an elderly person along the lines of his badgering of Charlton Heston in Bowling for Columbine, which was beyond the pale. And he goes on to talk about this interview. Moore's fear-mongering that Trump is going to call off the elections echoes with similar paranoia during the 2004 battle between then President George W. Bush and John Kerry. Bush didn't call it off and beat Kerry, much to the dismay of Moore, whose hit Fahrenheit 9/11 did not make money back then, and it wasn't another blatant effort to scare people in order to influence an election, but he failed then and he is failing now. Look, I think, you know, this is very typical of what we see in the video game industry too, right? Now you have Michael Moore turning around and basically saying, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. I blame you. I blame the American public for not paying to see my movie. Maybe it's that people were too busy being back at work, being productive to go see your movie, Mr. Moore. I'm not necessarily sure why people didn't see it, but certainly one of the reasons is that it's lazy. And people have heard this joke 1,000 times before. People are over the impressions of Trump on SNL. It's easy. It only appeals to those who are looking for that confirmation, who have confirmation bias, which is getting to be a smaller and smaller number every day, Rosie.
You could get the impression from reading, say, the arts pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post, that Michael Moore was just the low IQ, large print version of Noam Chomsky. Chomsky for idiots. That's not true, in my opinion. Noam Chomsky, for all his faults, is not a paranoid nor a fabricator. Noam Chomsky is interested in the clash of social and political forces and classes and so forth. Michael Moore is much more like a brown shirt looking for hidden financial conspiracies. And that's not even a vulgar form of Marxism. It's actually a great deal more like fascism.